Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. A few days ago I released a documentary called Miles, and it followed the story of this character. He happens to be a truck driver, and is the story of when he started driving at age 12 back in his country in Colombia in South America, and how he's now driving here in the United States. He kind of taught himself how to drive by looking at other people, and then he has continued that, and he discovered that he had like a gift for driving. So it's a very interesting story, very emotional, and I wanted to discuss what happened, what went through my mind when recording that, what was the planning of that. I'm going to try to keep it short, and I'm just going to highlight the important aspects of that for those of you who are creating content, who have limited resources when creating content. I would like to make this video. So without further ado, let's jump into DaVinci Resolve. I'm using that these days. I guess fancy. I don't know, it's perfect. Something that was interesting to me, or that I was trying to do with this documentary, was highlight how lonely this work is, this type of job is. It is a person inside of a truck for hours and hours and miles on end, just by himself. And it was interesting to me to play with the idea of color. We started shooting about 1 o'clock in the morning. You can see here it's like a very dark at night, clear skies that night. Beautiful night. It was, I don't know, about like 30 degrees out there. And I tried to keep everything in a very naturalistic way. One thing that I tried to do when shooting outside, shooting at night, at least for this particular documentary, was I tried to keep the highlights in a green color. Let me find here to make some annotations. This portion in here, I tried to kind of keep it, the highlights in a green color, and my idea was trying to convey a little bit of that loneliness, of that space. Is just that this human being in there, this character just living life. When everyone else is sleeping, he's out there working. It was 1 in the morning or so. And then in the shadows, I tried to keep all this portion. I tried to amplify the color of the shadows with blue. I added more blue to that, and I guess it was trying to, again, play that sense of loneliness, of sadness. You know, everyone else comfy and cozy at home, you know, with 20 blankets on top, and this guy is just working out there. So that's kind of a theme that is carried throughout the night. You can see it again. I have a couple more shots. For example, this shot again, the highlights are into the green tones. The tonality of this light over here is green, and the shadows had a little bit of a blue tint. You can see more of the blue tint down in here. Let's move on. A little bit of interior shots. Again, the same idea, green highlights. I always try to play with the idea of showing the character in action. It's a documentary, so I wanted to achieve that, a more naturalistic way of portraying the character. And again, a little bit of blue into the shadows. You can see it a lot down here. One thing is I use natural light. I didn't have lights for this. I brought a couple of lights, but the space is very minimal. Luckily for me, and I've been shooting cars for a while in advertising, so I know that the real estate inside of a car is very limited, and there's just so many ways that you can put a camera inside. And luckily for me, there was no chair, no passenger seat. These trucks have a bed that is on this back part of the cabin of the car, but so I was kind of filming everything from there. Kind of gave me a vantage point, almost like a POV point from what was happening. You can see it more clear in here, and I was trying to kind of highlight, you know, the silhouette of this character, kind of give these glimpses of light, again keeping the green and the highlights and the blue and the shadows. And as the night progresses, I start switching the light a little bit, trying to separate this character from the loneliness of the work, and trying to bring a little bit of hopefulness into that, a little bit more sense of accomplishment. For example, we're going to this kind of like a morning. We're talking about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. He's stopping to get breakfast, and as he's stopping to get breakfast, I start introducing a little bit more of like warmer tones, more yellows, more oranges into the highlights. Still keep the blues. I want to something to kind of glue together the past and the future of the story by keeping the shadows into the blue tones and trying to bring a little bit more light into the highlights, more yellow if you will. Then moving on into another shot, you can see again There's still a little bit of green, but trying to bring more yellow into that. You can see a little bit more reflected in here. And moving on, we go into the morning shots. For example, this here I brought the yellows to the max in here, to the point that it feels like it's a hopeful story, and that's what I wanted to tell when this guy started talking. This character started talking a little bit more of him. He was wearing a yellow shirt, so I kind of tried to match a little bit the mood and the sentiment I was trying to convey to the clothing that he was wearing. At night, it was a jacket. It was a dark jacket. He was covered, almost like shielded into things. And then in the morning, when the sun came up, he was wearing yellow. So he was a kind of a happy color. I wanted to tell that story. Something interesting that I have in here is like, this shot in particular is very interesting to me, because when trying to play with the colors, I had this idea of almost like a surreal world in which the skies are more than blue. They feel more like an aqua color, like almost it was an ocean floating in there. And that's kind of what I tried to replicate in here. You can see the sun is coming in this direction, and you can see all the light spilling on this. And the sky looks a little bit almost like surreal, if you will. And it kind of ties into the story of what this guy it's living. I kept the blues. You can see on the shadows, you can see a lot of blue. Of course, when you kind of mix blue and yellow, or blue and orange, it kind of has like a green tint. So I felt it was like a good transition from sadness and loneliness to a more happy state of mind of this character. And we finally end with shots of him outside, again trying to keep more highlight colors and the more yellow tones in the highlights, and trying to keep the the shadows and the undertones a little bit more kind of blue and a little bit more distant. And it was just a creative choice I did. Something that it was interesting to me when telling the story was that I felt when researching the story and talking to this character that it is not the most glamorous job in the world to drive a truck, and it is not necessarily the most like fashionable thing. He's not racing speed cars. He's not I don't know, transporting like hearts for people, or in a chopper or something like that. So I wanted to play with that idea, a job that is not necessarily glamorous. How do you bring it up? And I wanted to bring a sense of that into the music. And the music that I use in here, the way I chose the music was I tried to have a piece that was delicate enough to tell a story, to feel like a bed for the story to flow. And it has like two different elements. The same way that color was acting in the darker spaces as to be kind of sad and lonely and more like isolated, if you will. The music plays the exact same role. Let me play a little bit of what the music says, or the music does. It's a little bit sad, it's a little bit dark, if you will, and it kind of goes into the story of our character having your opening statement of, hey, I'm tired, I don't want to drive anymore. And that music kind of carries throughout the story as the guy's telling us and sharing with us what's happening through his mind, how he goes about driving every day, what's his routine, what time he wakes up, to the point of, hey, I did this for my family. I did this because I wanted to make more money to support them, to support myself. And I chose to do that because I felt it was a great thing for me. So I feel like that this transition went in from this dark space in music to a more happy state, more like hopeful, more epic, if you will, and it kind of elevates the piece or the message that I was trying to convey in here, that the profession of being a truck driver is not necessarily an isolated, it's not glamorous, but somehow there's poetry when told in this type of story. And the music goes something like this. So you see how the music kind of brings the story from that place of loneliness to this place of hopefulness. It's the morning, it's a new day, And one thing I learned is that I feel like it's the truck drivers in America, they're very blessed because they see the sun coming up every single morning. And that was kind of a beautiful thought that lasted and it would create an impression in my head. I just wanted to share it on with you. Finally, to end, everything was kind of tied together through an interview. I'm not going to talk about the interview here. I'm just going to show you a little clip of what I did.
De mi casa, levantarme, salir de mi casa e ir al...
The clip ends with an interview, and I'm not going to talk a lot about interview because it's a separate video in itself. I wanted to discuss how to make an interview for with one key light and very small practical lights around to keep it a more naturalistic way. Also, if you haven't watched the documentary I released it a couple of days ago, I'm gonna link it again up here. And if you don't mind, just like and subscribe. I would love to hear from you guys. See you. Bye.